Welcome. Today, we're going to discuss how Insight and Apple's partnership help our clients adopt Apple in the enterprise. And when we talk through adoption, it's through the procurement, it's through implementation of an Apple device, support of the Apple device, lifecycle. So think about everything related to Apple in the enterprise. Andrew and I are going to nail that today for you in this conversation. I'm Joe Flynn, Director and Distinguished Technologist and for Modern Workplace within Insight. Andrew?
I'm Andrew Finley. I'm a solutions architect here at Insight, working with clients around their Apple fleets and how Insight can help you grow those.
Great. Let's dive in, Andrew, because I know you and I tend to have a lot of lengthy discussions around this topic. But I mean, to start, let's just jump in on how Insight and Apple work together to support most enterprise organizations. And I know from my perspective, I think the relationship we have with Apple is compared to no one at this point, right? We've full teams that just support the Apple business from a hardware and technology perspective to our services organization that do Apple services related to getting devices within an enterprise. Can you provide your take on, because you came from Apple, right? That's an even better point of view, is you were Apple for years. Now you're on the partner side with Insight. So it's great to see your perspective on this partnership.
Yeah, I really think it's amazing how well Insight and Apple work together. We really are partnered closely on helping our clients achieve their technology goals. And Apple brings obviously incredible expertise around devices and device management and platform security. And Insight's able to then add in that deep expertise about lifecycle and asset management and infrastructure and all of the full managed services that can really help clients move forward with their Apple fleets.
Great. Let's jump into the next question because provisioning is a hot topic for every single customer we speak to, right? And so a lot of common questions we get from customers, and the first one tends to be is, how can Apple Business Manager streamline device enrollment and provisioning for an enterprise organization?
Sure. Well, Apple Business Manager is really the catalog of your Apple device purchases. So when you buy a Mac or iPad or iPhone from Insight, we're going to automatically enroll that device into your Apple Business Manager instance. Apple Business Manager, or ABM, will pass that device information on to your MDM platform of choice, your device management platform of choice, whether that's Intune or Jamf or something else. And when the end user goes and opens up that box for the first time and they run through Setup Assistant, the MDM platform will recognize that that device is owned by you and will automatically enforce enrollment of the device. So this is called automated device enrollment, and it's all facilitated by Apple Business Manager.
Well, one thing people need to understand is we talk provisioning all the time across all platforms, across all operating systems. And the common thing I like to tell people is Apple pretty much, and Andrew, you can agree with me or not, the first to do these provisioning methodologies, right? If you look at Apple DEP, now it's Apple Business Manager, they've done it the longest. Others are starting to catch up. I mean, but it took them a few years to even get started. But if we talk about deploying modern Apple devices in an organization, provisioning has always been their method of deployment into an organization, which streamlines ownership, which streamlines support, and streamlines just the onboarding process all up.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the streamlining of ownership. Again, that's where Apple Business Manager really takes control, is that the chain of ownership is secure. That allows businesses to be able to apply the most amount of restrictions and security policies and everything to make sure that corporate data is secure and user privacy is protected. And as you said, this goes back a decade plus. Apple really moved away from the imaging business a long time ago and moved to this modern provisioning method of device management via configuration policies. And so that's where we're at now with this really mature environment for managing Apple devices in the corporate environment.
Yeah, definitely a smart move. And I guess you got to say, just seeing from the consumer space to now, Apple tends to, right, always be the first to many things when it comes to technology.
Yeah.
Now let's jump into the mobile device management world, right? And can you help explain some of the benefits of using an MDM mobile device management platform that supports Mac OS in the enterprise settings?
Sure. Well, MDM is really the only way to go for corporate owned Macs and corporate owned Apple devices. With an MDM solution, you can control all of your device settings, accounts, passcode policies, all the device restrictions. And MDM is how you also enforce security policy. So that is really the way to go for managing your Apple fleet and making sure that devices are configured in a way that you're happy with, IT and InfoSec are comfortable, but again, also making that sure that InfoSec corporate data is secure and user privacy is protected, and also allowing for a great user experience, being able to use the Apple devices, but knowing that they're configured in such a way that employees are able to get to work, do their jobs, and have everything configured the way IT would like it.
Yeah, and I think customers do have to realize when we start talking about these mobile device management platforms, very cloud centric, the technology moves super fast, right? And some people like yourself, Andrew, myself, we live these technologies on a day-to-day basis. So we can help customers understand what are the benefits of these technologies, what do they have to do. And one thing I've always tried to express to customers when you're dealing with these newer cloud-based platforms is think outside the box, because these platforms can do so much, but yet we find many customers are only leveraging a fraction of what the capabilities are. So think about like what is the North Star for you in managing your Mac device, managing your iPad, your iOS type of device, what you may need to do in your organization. And these tools most likely can do it. It's just a matter of thinking through the what and the how.
Yeah, I encounter a lot of clients who are just scratching the surface of what they can do with Microsoft Intune, for example, and managing their Mac fleet. And there's a lot there, and there's a lot of expertise here at Insight where we can help you figure out what more you can do and how to really provide that effective device management to that whole system.
Platform SSO is one of them, right? It's configurable options. Like, since you mentioned Microsoft Intune, right? It's configurable options in that Intune space that helps customers be able to leverage their Azure AD or cloud-based credentials to log on to the Mac itself. So kind of streamline user management and password management.
Exactly.
Great. So question now we're going to jump right into security, right? Is how can enterprise organizations ensure the security of their Mac devices, including encryption and compliance with industry regulations? When we talk about industry, let's also kind of break it out into even vertical regulations.
So there's a lot of layers to providing security for Apple devices. The first layer or the first step is really just keeping current with OS upgrades, operating system upgrades. Apple has a whole system called Appleseed for IT, where companies can do year-round beta testing of operating systems to make sure that they're applying the OS in a timely fashion, which is where Apple's going to implement all the latest security features and capabilities. Apple also then will post rapid security responses that get added in on top of your operating systems. So it's really important to maintain OS upgrades to keep current with the security frameworks that Apple implements. That framework, the platform security frameworks that Apple provides, is incredibly comprehensive, and it's easy to manage with your MDM solution. So again, going back to that MDM topic, that's how you apply the platform security and all the settings and policies and capabilities within there. Certainly, Insight can help you if you are looking to add in more or third-party solutions like Microsoft Defender or CrowdStrike, and how to implement and configure those to even be more effective with your security compliance. And then there's a tool called the macOS Security Compliance Project. And this was the tool that was established and built by NIST and Apple, so the National Institute of Standards and Technology, along with Apple. They built this framework, this tool set that allows companies to apply templates that adhere to industry standard benchmarks. And what that does is it allows companies to just apply the templates matched up to the benchmark and easily achieve corporate security compliance based on whatever industry they may be in. So there's a whole bunch of capability and tools that are already exist and allow regulated industries or just companies who would like to apply templatized approach to security all to apply that very simply and easily with their MDM solution.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the preview version because I'm looking around in my office. I'm not sure I have a single device that's not on some preview version of an OS. Even for the Vision Pro, right? Running the beta version of that OS to understand what's coming. But let me ask this question tied to security: is what do you find as the hardest pieces of security for companies to implement or adopt from an Apple perspective?
I honestly don't think it's that hard to implement or adopt the security. It winds up being more of a mindset with InfoSec teams, a level of comfort in understanding that Macs can be secure in a corporate environment. That is the biggest challenge that I come across. Is you'll have an IT team that wants to be able to support Mac and provide Macs as more and more employees are requesting Mac in the enterprise. But then the security team is maybe saying, we don't understand platform security for Apple. Um, we don't know how to do it. We're not comfortable with it. We don't believe that it can be secure. When the opposite is true, really, it really is very comprehensive, as I said, to implement platform security for Apple devices. So in that instance, talk to Insight. We're happy to help walk you through the capabilities and the tool sets that are available.
Great. So on to the next beast of a question here. When it comes to Apple devices, now we talked about provisioning, we talked about Apple Business Manager, but how can Apple devices easily be integrated into an enterprise network? Knowing, right, the enterprise network is not the same network we were 5 years ago, right? where everybody was in the office. The enterprise network now is sitting in the office. It's also people sitting at home. It could be potentially at this point people traveling. How do Apple or Mac devices integrate into those types of networks?
Well, fortunately, Apple devices do fit within and work with standard network and VPN protocols. And Apple actually has detailed documentation available for how to configure your network to support, in particular, device management. So, using features like the Apple Push Notification Service, which is the backbone of how MDM communicates with devices and with Apple Business Manager. All that's available via Apple documentation. And this has really allowed companies to be able to, as you said, configure the network to support remote employees. There's even a tool available called the Mac Evaluation Utility where you can install it on a Mac, maybe a remote Mac, somebody that works from home or works in coffee shops on a regular basis, and can do a test from an IT perspective to make sure that that device connects properly. I'd actually love to hear your perspective, Joe, just on the broader picture of implementing Macs within an employee, networking infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, I was leaning towards what you were saying. Nowadays, everything is internet based, right? So most things that I tend to work with, even though I'm mostly remote, I'll be honest with you, 95% of the time, I'm usually connecting to an internet or a cloud based application more than internal. Now, even at Insight, right, we do have users that do connect internal, and there's VPNs and other things that we tend to use. I think it's just easier as we modernize, as most companies, as we modernize, as most organizations are doing. Most applications are becoming SaaS-based, cloud-based. So those network requirements are not becoming as strict because we're not always poking holes to allow things to come from the internet into our on-premises environment at that point. So I think it's getting easier and easier, and especially with provisioning, right? A lot of times you just need that internet-based access 8443 to do a lot of these type of workloads. And that tends to be the standard access that many companies allow anyways. Okay, so this next one I love is because I know this is a big misconception that you talk about the customers, I talk about the customers, but it's always around application compatibility, right? Is like, what are the key factors to consider when ensuring application compatibility for Mac users in the enterprise? Andrew, you speak to customers all the time, right? And we have those misconceptions that we like to bring up to customers. And some of the things was around provisioning, some of the things around supportability, which we discussed on the mobile device management side. But then application compatibility is the next. How do you approach that with customers, and how does that factor in?
So with app compatibility, the first thing you need to do is really consider what are the most critical day-to-day apps. And sometimes it's helpful to really do a persona mapping exercise to find out what each department really needs, find out what the critical apps are. And if there's app compatibility gaps, then you can make some decisions, possibly finding an app from another company that supports the same file types. Maybe you can use a cloud or a web-based instance of the app or do a virtualized environment if it's a Windows app that's just simply critical. Insight also has an app modernization team. If you need to do some development work on in-house apps, we can certainly help with that type of service opportunity. Where we're seeing a lot of clients really achieve success with Mac in particular in their environment is with that general knowledge worker, the day-to-day general knowledge worker that's using the Microsoft productivity tools like I am on my Mac all day long here at Insight. Those are completely compatible. You can use OneDrive to store your files, access all the native Microsoft apps on your Mac, and everything works fantastic there. So it's really about a conversation and understanding what are your day-to-day needs of the people who want to use Mac, and what are the applications that really are going to be supported and compatible for your environment.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, if customers are thinking through their applications that they have on premises today, and they possibly are legacy applications tied to a Windows Server environment or just a Windows endpoint, I think ideally, right, you want to try to take a step back and think definitely outside the box. There is what can I do to modernize this application? Like Andrew, you mentioned, Insight has our mod apps practice, which just drives application modernization across our customer base. And it's getting those applications to probably be more cloud-based, web-based, SaaS-based. So ultimately, you're device agnostic. So it opens up that choose your own device type of capability within an organization to give you users an opportunity to be able to use any device that they prefer to any application. So you're not locking yourself into applications. And a lot of times you're not locking yourself into applications that are potentially on premises at the same time, requiring VPNs and those type of accesses. So something to start thinking about as organizations when if you talk the term modernization, you're not only modernizing the endpoint, modernizing user experience, you definitely want to consider modernizing the applications and the security at the same time. Okay, now next question is around adoption of Mac in the enterprise. And when we talk about adoption, how can enterprise organizations provide effective training and support for end user and help desk staff across Mac devices in the enterprise?
Apple has training available for IT departments, first of all. So, all of the device management capability that we've been talking about, there is a training course available from Apple. There's also a certification exam that goes along with that for device management. There is a complementary course that's all for help desk. So, for help desk teams that are new to supporting Apple devices in their environment, there's training available from Apple around that. For the end users, talk to your Insight team if you're interested in having some training for end users. There are webinars that Apple actually hosts that are called the Mac Skills Series, and they're designed for employees who are using Mac in a business environment. If you're really building out a larger Apple fleet and you're expanding Mac rapidly and you're looking for a more customized and personalized training environment, Insight has change management systems and tools that we can use to help you build out a full Mac training program for your employees.
Yeah, and I think one thing customers have to understand is when you start opening up Mac as a choice within your environment, I think you're going to realize there's more users in your environment that already are friendly, right? Are used to or comfortable using a Mac device. And I think so that training for those users in your user base is going to be much easier to do. The training and the adoption, I think, Andrew, that you're talking about when we're looking at learning and development type training, classroom training, web-based training, are probably going to be for many of the users who may not have used a Mac before, but they want to try something different. They're getting great feedback from their coworkers, from their friends about the experience on a Mac device. And so there may be some learning requirements on their side to understand how to do a few things, because it's not a one-to-one if you're coming from a Windows device to a Mac device. But keep the understanding that when you expand Mac in the enterprise from a choice perspective, I think you're going to find a higher percentage of users are probably going to prefer the Mac in the enterprise than currently everybody who's using a Windows.
Yeah, the reality is that so many employees are using Apple devices at home. They've probably got iPhones. If they've gone through college recently, they probably used Macs at school. And so there is a lot of familiarity and comfort with using Apple, which is really what's driving a lot of the adoption of Mac in the enterprise is employees that want to use it because they already know the tools. So what companies wind up doing is when you're building out an employee choice practice that includes Mac, just have some internal resources or communication channels, a
Champion.
Teams chat, for example, where employees who are knowledgeable about Mac are able to help the employees who are less knowledgeable. And that winds up really easing the burden on IT as well on the help desk side, because people will say, well, how do I use Teams on a Mac, for example? And there will be 50 people in your org that know how to do it and are experts and are happy to help and share.
Yeah, I mean, there's Teams chats, there's Viva Engage, there's plenty of technologies out there that sort of draw in the community type of chat and support. So you can ultimately leverage the community base to support each other, not just worrying about classroom-based training.
Exactly.
Next is, I mean, and I think this is where Insight shines, is around asset and lifecycle management. So what strategies from your point of view, Andrew, can be employed for effective asset and lifecycle management for Mac devices in the enterprise? Love to hear yours, because I'm definitely going to chime in here.
Well, we'll probably talk about a lot of the same things. I certainly Insights lifecycle management and asset management is really unique in the enterprise. As you mentioned at the top of this, I did come from Apple, so I've worked with a lot of clients in a lot of different sectors. And what enterprise businesses don't always consider is that end-to-end life cycle. They don't consider how are the devices moving around throughout the world? How are we keeping track of the tickets that are open and support issues and just general, are the devices being used? And then at the end of the life, where are the devices going? Are they sitting in a closet? You would be surprised how many clients I talk to who have a closet behind them and they'll say on a meeting with me, oh, check this out. Here's my stack of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old Macs that are just sitting there collecting dust. So Insight can help with that entire end-to-end process. And we really have a lot of expertise there.
Yeah, I mean, and just to add to that, you nailed it. I think we're definitely in a class of our own when it comes to asset and lifecycle management. I mean, we have a service we provide. We call it cradle to grave visibility of the devices. So it's not just the moment you procure your Mac device, but ultimately, right, is it in stock, in inventory, ready to be sent out? If it is sent out, is it trackable when it is being shipped? Has it been signed for? Was it left at the front door? Ultimately, is there an exception? To the point I was, and you nailed it, is it in use, right? Can we talk to the Jamfs of the world, the Intunes of the world, the Workspace ones of the world to make sure that Mac device is in someone's hands and is being used on a daily basis? All the way through break fix, but then more important part is when you get to the end of life of that device. You nailed it, Andrew. There's a lot of customers out there that have closets full of equipment they don't know what to do with, or they have users who may have received a new device and they put their old device in their drawer. These are dollars that the company is sitting on, and this is where Insight Service can ultimately help. Is we can take those devices, put them through a disposal vendor that would ultimately not only provide certificate of destruction or certificate of erasure, but more importantly, can we resell those devices for you? Can we get money back for those devices that you can ultimately put that investment somewhere else? So think about this when you're thinking through your lifecycle management play: is do you have an automated way to do it? You have a clean way to do it, but more importantly, are you getting the most out of those devices from procurement all the way to the end of the life? And then at the end of the life, are you getting the most money you can for those devices? So on that note, thank you everybody for today's session. And hopefully if you have questions, reach out. Rocio, I'm sure you're going to add more after this.